Welcome to the Museum of Aquarium and Pet History. This is September 2023, and I'm going to give you a little preview of what's coming up as far as our video series goes. We recently got back from the Super Zoo, which was a giant pet trade show that was in Las Vegas, Nevada, and we had a chance to interview 5 industry legends in Las Vegas at the Super Zoo show. So in the next upcoming months, we're going to have interviews with all these 5 different people. And just to give you a little preview, we're going to start off in September with Robyn Bright, who basically grew up in the pet industry. She was a writer for Pet Business Magazine for over 20 years. She was a pet product developer, actually, developed some products for the pet industry. She actually was an industry teacher, and she also was a marine fish photographer and had a lot of her photos that appeared on different packaging and in different things in the industry. So that's Robyn Bright. She'll be coming up next. Hopefully by next month we'll have Steve Lublin of Dolphin International, which is the person who basically invented the transship of tropical fish. He invented that whole industry, and he will be next month. After that we have Frank Williams, the owner of Pet Pacific in Australia. That's the largest pet distributor in Australia, been there since 1975. And he'll talk about the last 50 years of the pet industry in Australia. So that's a good one. The next one will be Jason Savitt. He's a 3rd generation of Preview Hendrix. So that is for all my birdcage friends out there. That was really an interesting interview. He covered a lot of things I did not know. He comes from 3 generations of manufacturers in the pet industry. And the latest company is both Preview Hendrix or Preview Pet Products. And as you know, that was the company that absorbed Hendrix bird cages in the mid to late 1960s. And last but not least, we have Phil Cooper. Phil Cooper is an industry icon. He has been a rep in the industry. He's been a partner in different pet industry ventures and that kind of thing. But he was alive and well and working in the pet industry in the 60s, and he knew all the giants. He knew the Willinger brothers, he knew Metaframe, he knew Perfecto, all the greats in the industry. And that was really an interesting talk as well, because most of the talks went about 20 minutes, but his went an hour. So think John Willinger. It was that kind of a talk where I didn't have to talk much because Phil had so much he wanted to say. So that's going to be probably Christmas or January that we'll get to that one, but that's Phil Cooper. So without further ado, let's start off with Robyn Bright. Friends, and all you people that love history like I do, we're at the Mermaid Lounge at the Super Zoo show in Las Vegas, Nevada. This is one of the largest pet shows actually in the world. It's enormous, and there's thousands of people here, and we're in our little Mermaid Lounge that they were so generous to give us here at the show. And I have a chance to interview Robyn Bright, who's been in the industry her entire life, starting with her father, who started a fish store in his basement. So we're going to talk about that. I'm going to have Robyn sort of start off with her early life, how her father had this little basement fish store and how it went into a retailer, and then how she segued into the pet industry. So Robyn?
Hello, thank you for having me. I guess it was my mom wanted a fish tank for a room divider in their very early 60s. And my dad got into it, and he actually sold, stuff in the very early 60s. And about 64, when I was born, just after that, we moved, and he actually started a real fish store in the basement. Did that part-time. He had a full-time job in Boston, and that was in Concord, Mass. And I remember back then they had the blue laws, I think they called it. He couldn't open Sundays. They couldn't, sell Sundays. But anyways, and then at some point about 68, we moved to a house that had a store attached, and he went full-time into the fish. And then in about 72, he moved to a strip mall that was built that year, and he went full line with the birds, small animals, reptiles, of course, fish. And he called it the Fish Nook. And he was so well known by then, so he called it the Fish Nook Pet Center instead of the Pet Nook. So he just, like I said, he was just well known at that point. And I still remember, I started working for him when I was 10 years old. It was $1 an hour.
And your dad's store is still in business.
Yeah, my dad's store is still in business. My dad unfortunately passed in 2018, and but he had sold it to his manager Sean in 2013, and Sean still does that. He does a lot of tank maintenance too. I did that as well in the 2000s, and worked on and off for my dad for a number of years, of course. But yeah, it's still in business and still selling pets and fish and everything.
Great. Well, tell us how you started, like in the industry, like because I know that you wrote a column for I think Bird Talk magazine.
Pet business.
Pet business.
Actually, yeah.
Yeah, because you wrote a column for a long time, and I remember reading those. Those are great articles, by the way. But you also are a scuba diver, and you also did a lot of things in the pet industry. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you've done after your store?
It was about 1996. I was living in North Carolina, and actually Bird Talk was down there, and Pet Business was down there at the time. And I ended up working for like the Bird Talk thing, but it was not for writing and stuff. But Pet Business actually had a bird columnist, and so they had said, "Would you like to write the bird column?" And that was actually I left, Pet Business. I had moved back home to Massachusetts because I was living, like I said, in North Carolina. Ended up writing the bird column from, I think it was like September of May of 1996 until May of 2019. So yeah, I did it for a long time. And then Pet Business had the fish issues that they brought out like every year, and for like 4 or 5 years. And so I wrote a lot of the fish articles for that, and I had a lot of fun interviewing some people like the shark guys. In 1999, Barry Berman started Next Pet. And in 2000, he got a hold of me through Pet Business Magazine because I wrote an article about marketing birds. And he asked me about, do I know a lot about birds or marketing? And I said, actually, I know a lot about pets. Don't ask me about computers, but I know a lot about pets. And so he hired me on, and I actually wrote all the educational things for Next Pet. It was like a flex quiz, we call it, and it was like a question and answer where, is catnip good for cats, things like that. And then we have the answers, and then you could give it to your new employees and stuff like that and educate them. And that's my biggest passion, is education in the pet industry. I always want to be like the Dear Abby for pet people. But anyway, so I did that, and I've worked with Barry Berman since 2000. And then we started our own pet food, and so I'm the half Next Pet and half our pet food. And then in 2008, I want to say, when Pet Store Pro came out, they actually contacted me because I think that's actually through Pet Business again. And anyways, they asked about, they were doing all the livestock modules then. And they sent me the one that I think was actually on birds or something. And it was not written for employees. I mean, that's what it was supposed to be. And this great woman who unfortunately has passed, we actually started working together, Stephanie Kaplan, and from Pet Store Pro. And anyways, long story short, I ended up writing all the modules, which was reptiles, small animals, freshwater fish, saltwater fish. I'm I'm getting on my cat, dog. And anyway, so I did those. They were a ball, although I worked on them like till midnight or even 3 a.m. because I actually got the job in December, and they introduced it at Global the next year. So, but it's been very popular. And then I rewrote the quizzes because unfortunately the quizzes were hard. And I went to college, and I got my biology degree from UMass Amherst, and I got my master's degree on studying animal behavior, but I also did teaching certification, so I knew how to write quizzes, so I ended up doing that. And of course, they've expanded a lot now, but I'm proud of those modules, and I know that NextPet retail members use that, as well as our Flex quizzes, which are more on product and things like that, to educate their people, and I'm very proud of that.
I have one question for you about catnip, since you're a question lady or an answer lady. We have this Hall of Crazy where we take these like 5 really interesting pet products that have probably never made it, and they failed for one reason or another, and I'll do a 5-minute video on them. And one of them we had was a champagne bottle filled with catnip, and there was no instructions. And so I was showing it, saying, okay, so like, do you celebrate New Year's with your cat and you give them the champagne of catnip, and can you overdose your cat with catnip? I don't know that answer.
No, you can't overdose them with catnip, and it depends on the cat. Some cats don't even like catnip, but most of them do. But kittens usually don't react to it until they're older. So if somebody gives it to their kitten and their kitten doesn't like it, wait a bit and then give it to them when they're a bit older or maybe an adult, and they usually do like it. There's also valerian, which is another product that's used to make the cats high, I guess. And yeah, so, but yeah, I mean, you can't really overdose them, but they usually don't eat it. They usually just roll in it and sniff it. I know my cat at home, she likes to put her whole face in the bag and just suck on fumes.
I think we're going to start seeing this in these pot stores that have sprung up all over the place. They're going to have, catnip dens now.
There's a company called Meowiwana. So yeah, they play on that,
So you've been talking about some of the people that, like John Willinger, who's legendary, Andy Schmidt, who we've lost, unfortunately, who that company is a legendary company, and he was like second generation and stuff. Can you talk a little bit about them and how you know them?
As I joked with you earlier, I went to the dark side in 1995 and started being a detailer for a different company. So I was very lucky. I was in North Carolina then, and worked with JW Pet, John Willinger's company, and San Francisco Bay brand with Andy, and a few others. And so that's where I really got to know them. Then I moved up to Massachusetts, where Harvey Feinberg, who is Mr. Perfecto, he was like my second dad, and he knew my dad from the 60s, and basically got me a job back in the Massachusetts area with another detailing group when I moved back home. So John Willinger, it was so funny because he's very stiff upper lip. He's very serious. But he, it was near Halloween for one of the shows. I think it was the one in Chicago. Anyway, I wore a gorilla suit, and I worked at his booth in the gorilla suit. And he just didn't like that. So he was like, yeah. So I've gotten to talk with him quite a bit. And of course, I actually studied parrots for my master's, and he talked to me about when his bird toys came out. And he showed me, I remember he took me behind the drapes at a show. It was so funny because he wanted to keep it a secret. But he asked me about, bird toys and stuff. And I said, well, birds actually can see color. And like dogs and cats can see a few colors, birds can see all colors, because in the wild they have to find like ripe fruit and things like that. So they especially like orange and red and yellow. And anyways, he talked to me about the colors, and I said, yeah, that's one thing. You need to make them bright because they do, see colors. And actually, I did work with Multi-Pet for a very short time, and I designed 6 bird toys that were different sea creatures. Of course, they were bright colors. They had eyes on them because the birds do like the eyes, and they had little rope pieces below because they could chew on that. John Willinger actually joined NextPet in right in the beginning, like in 2000. And so I worked with him. Of course, I worked with his marketing person, and they were very supportive of that. Unfortunately, when they got bought out, they left us. But so that's how I knew John. And then Andy Schmidt, I actually interviewed him. I worked with him, of course, when I worked with the detailing groups back in the mid-90s. And another fish head, we both got along so great. I interviewed him for one of the fish issues for the Pet Business. And, he was just a sweetheart of a guy. And we would talk about getting more, like the aquatic experience and stuff like that. We talked about that. and getting more kids involved in the pet industry. Of course, he was amazing guy, and just talked to him at every show. We were just, he was such a big guy, and of course I'm 5'10", so it was like nice, a big hug, from him was awesome. So yeah, I really miss him. So, and John Willinger, because he doesn't show at the shows anymore. Obviously, he got out of the thing. So yeah, so it's a kind of bummer. These old school people that that we will miss very much.
And they contain so much knowledge, and if we don't record it, we'll lose it forever, which is what we're trying to do. I was going to tell you about the bird vision because we studied UVB for a long time when we did reptile lighting. And I think humans, don't we have 3 or 4 cones in our eyes?
3, I
think it's 3, and that gives us all our color visions. But birds have 4, and the 4th cone sees ultraviolet.
Yeah.
And that's so, like, when a bird's flying, if a predator marks its territory, it fluoresces. They can see it.
Yeah.
So they know not to land there. There's a tiger or whatever down there, and they'll get eaten. So did I miss anything? I know you sent me a really nice email. We are going to show a picture of your dad's fish store in his basement. Meredith will put that up. And I noticed in the picture of your dad's store, he had the splatter tanks on the bottom row. So when you folks see it, look at the bottom row, you'll see splatter tanks, which probably was made by Aquarium Stock Company. And you'll see the stainless steel tanks on top. And if they're East Coast, who knows who made those. And I think that's it. Do you have any last minute thoughts?
No, one of the things about my dad with connections, he never was one to toot his own horn or anything. So he's very quiet, but definitely a fish head. And one of the things that I was proud of him is that I think it was the early 70s when Hagen came out with their first power filter. They actually took a picture of one of his aquariums. So that's his aquarium on that box. So I thought that was really cool. So
That's great.
yeah, I've really been proud of him. I miss him every day. He was like my mentor, best friend. And, when I went scuba diving, I showed him my pictures. I used to do the underwater photography. And I've taken a lot of fish pictures that has been used by John Willinger and others like Aqueon and things like that. So, I love taking fish pictures, especially because I think they're the hardest to get and to know that they have, they're correct and stuff. My dad was everything, and he really got me into this industry, and I love this industry. I'm just very passionate about it. And I thank you for taking the time with me for interviewing, and your passion as well.
Thank you so much, Robyn. I really appreciate you coming and sitting down with us. And thank you for believing in this industry, because we love it. We don't ever want to see it go away. I mean, it's our life. This is what we do. All right. Well, that's it. Till next one.